Welcome to Corralling the Chaos podcast, where we talk publicly about the things you're worried about privately. My name is Angela Leah, and I'm your host. This is the event industry podcast for companies and crew, where we're going to go deep and nothing is off limits. Welcome back to another episode of Corralling the Chaos. Today we have a special guest with us, Huong Nguyen, who is the CEO and founder of Shiloh Events. And as the head of this full-service event agency, Huong spearheads the management and large-scale production of corporate events for companies like Zoom, Microsoft, Samsung, Philips, all names we've all heard of course, delivering captivating experiences that leave a lasting impact on brands across the globe. Prior to founding Shiloh, Huong managed communications for NASA and organized community events at ServiceNow. Huong's career has encompassed event marketing, digital marketing, and community relations, positioning her as a well-rounded expert in the industry. So welcome, Huong. So glad you joined us.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this episode because budget management is one of those things that's could really make or break the entire return on investment of your event. So it's a really great topic to dive into. And I have so many insights and lessons learned from my experience that I love to share to help other planners to also be effective with their money spend.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to dive into that topic too, because there's always this expectation and then there's reality, right? And it's, a lot of these companies are like, hey, I want to do this, crazy thing. And of course, anything's possible if you have the right budget, right? And I think sometimes people have unrealistic expectations. So it'll be great for you to kind of walk us through how you handle those things. So today we are going to be talking about building events around your clients' goals and how to manage some of those budgeting expectations. But first, before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about Shiloh Events and what led you to kind of start the company and how that all happened.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have such a huge passion for events. When I came to America at the age of 8, I didn't really know any English. I didn't know what the culture was. So one of the ways that I learned English was to watch culture TV, and that was MTV, music awards, Grammys. And that's how I got into the passion of events and just watching the entire production. And I always asked myself, what would it be like to be in the room where it all happened, where the decisions were being made and things were, being ideated. And so that excitement really got me into, okay, I'm going to go into a career with events. So I got my bachelor's in events management. And then I got my MBA. And then from there, I worked, doing trade shows and conferences for NASA and for ServiceNow. And then I realized there's a gap in the industry right now because, first of all, the industry is very stressful. And the way that I want to do events, I want to deliver peace. I want the people that I work with to experience peace whenever they're doing their logistics or, coordinating the venue and the food. I want them to feel this sense of calmness in a stressful industry. And so I picked Shiloh because it's a Hebrew word for peace. So when my clients hire me, they are hiring peace as an extension of their team. And so Shiloh is a full service agency. We do A to Z project management, logistics, execution, but we also help our clients strategize and we consult with them on basically their entire program and help them develop it. So, and personally, I've been in the industry for 15 plus years now, and I love it. I don't plan on stopping. If anything, I want to eventually do my own event to help elevate other planners into, from a tactical thinking to strategic thinking. That would be my next.
That's the next thing. You heard it here first. Well, first of all, I just love the use of the word peace. I didn't know Shiloh meant that. And I think that's so interesting, right? Because especially in today's world, forget the business of events. Life is hard. It's stressful. It's chaotic. And so to introduce the thought of peace is really great. Now, when you add producing really high-end events like you're talking about for Microsoft and Zoom and ServiceNow, that's a different level of stress, right? These are live events. There's no do-overs, right? It's now or never, make or break it kind of thing. And so I love that because I think that's what all of these companies are buying, right? They're buying the vision, but they want to have a sense of peace in that journey that you're taking them through, right? They want to know that they have confidence in you and that you're going to bring their vision into reality, and they have a peace about that and a comfort. So I absolutely love the use of that word peace. I hope more in our industry learn to bring that out in each other and our customers, because I think it would make it a little less chaotic. But you're obviously, through Shiloh, creating event experience, again, for some really big names. Companies that don't invest in their events lightly, it's a really big deal to them. So they have to have a healthy ROI. So what are some examples of what ROI looks like for your clients?
Yeah, so our clients, they vary in different sectors and industries and types of events as well. I mean, there's both big size conferences that has a large budget, and then there's smaller events. Then there's internal events for their employees and externally facing. So a healthy ROI for us, it's more than just the money, right? It's time, it's people, it's relationships, career, and conversion from attendees to customers. And it's all invested into creating these meaningful experience that has one goal, which is to yield return for the company, yield in revenue, basically, at the end of the day, right? So, but before we can even look at examples of ROI, we need to understand our event goals. Why are you even doing this event in the first place? What's your objectives? What's the ultimate call to action? And so they always ask me, how much is it going to do X, Y, Z, right? And I always take a step back and ask them, what is your goal? What is your event objective?
How often do they not have a goal? By the time you get to them, how often is it that they haven't thought about that, right? They just know they wanted to look and feel this way. Who knows yet what they want to come from it, right?
Yeah, all the time I get prospects come to me and they say, I want to do a user conference for 500 people. How much is it going to take? And I said to them, okay, well, what are your goals? And they're like, well, we just want to get people together, and we want to evangelize our product. Well, what else, right?
What does that look like, right?
Yeah, so once we identify the goals, we can then start defining the ROI. And so for me and our agency, there's two types of ROI. There's qualitative and quantitative. And quantitative is where it's formulaic, right? Where you take the number of revenues for the conference, you minus the expense, you divide by the expense, you multiply by 100, and you get a percentage of ROI. And most of the time it's negative, because it's hard to break even, to be really honest with you, when you're doing user conferences, even if you bring in sponsorship revenue.
Yeah.
So it's formulaic. And then it's, then there's conversion rates, and there's renew contracts, conversion from attendee to customers, but also expansion of that as well. Quantities of social media posts, increase in followership, strong customer feedback, and all of these are quantitative, right? Mm-hmm. However, there are some clients that don't charge for their conferences, internal events. How do you quantitatively measure the ROI for that?
Yeah.
And nonprofit events. So here's an example. We are working with a client that's doing a sales kickoff. And to be really honest with you, they really, there was an internal discussion that they talked to each other, and I listened in, and they're like, well, what's the return on investment? And the executives and all the team said, I don't know. How do you measure the return on investment for a sales kickoff, especially if it's internal events, right? So
sometimes it's easier to measure the loss by not doing it, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't afford not to do it. And sometimes I think our industry forgets to talk about that aspect of it. It's not just what you're going to get by doing it, but can you afford to not do it?
You're right. Exactly. And, the answer to that would be, for internal events, I think you cannot afford to not do it, meaning you have to do it, especially if you want to inspire your people to meet their sales quota for the year, and you want to educate them and give them the resources to effectively sell. And so the ROI for that quantitatively would be, how many people actually downloaded the documents, right? How many sales did that group make? Did they meet their sales quota? That's how you can quantitatively measure the ROI. And so, I think there are ways that, for us, the secret formula is, first of all, understanding your event cost. That's extremely important. You got to know what you're going into the event with, and then at the end of the day, what the outcome that you want it to be. So some examples, outcome would be, like I said, increase in sales, net new sales, right? Sales from existing customers, or increase morale, low turnover at the end of the program, views on on-demand content, increase collaboration network. So you got to start with that. So cost for your event and the desired outcome.
Yeah.
And then and then there's there's qualitative, and the qualitative is also that's something that you cannot measure. That's something like, for an example, if you really you want to product evangelize, right? How do you measure that really? So you gotta. It's not just one thing that happens in time that is your ROI. It's everything combined.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and you got to lead the customer on that journey, right, and help them to think about it the same way you are. Otherwise, they're viewing it through a totally different lens than you are, and I think that's the art of doing this, right? Because it's not A plus B or 1 plus 2 always equals 3. It's just not always done that way. But talk to me a little bit. I saw a LinkedIn post you did that I think was fantastic around, again, expectation and reality, right? And so talk to me about strategic budgeting and how you and your team handle those tough budget conversations with clients. And to your LinkedIn post, I think you said something like, hey, a client comes to you and says, yeah, why is AV going to cost me $250,000? Like, how do you handle that? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, before I even do that, there's a couple quotes that rings to my mind right now. Is like, there's one quote that says, project plans are fiction because it hasn't happened yet, right? So budget, same thing. Budget is a fiction. Like, it's something that we fantasize and we create and we hope it's going to happen. But oftentimes, like, we always prep our client that, we can meet your budget, we can go under budget, but there are things that are going to happen along the way that you're going to decide to add, or unforeseen circumstances like increase in attendees that you have to, fork out more money for food and beverage or rooms, right? So that's what we always tell our clients, that change is constant. That's number one.
How surprised are they when you say that to them? Like, are they open to like, yeah, I get it? Or was there still a lot of education around getting them to really understand, like, this is fiction, it's a goal, it's not reality at this point? Like, how open are they to hearing that?
Yeah, so a lot of times there's sticker shock, but I do educate them on this one concept. It's just, so let's say we have buckets in the budget, right? We have menu, AV, food, etc. And I tell them the number at the very top is what I'm committed to. However, the numbers in the buckets may change. So let's say you save money on AV, and I'll try to negotiate as much as possible for you there. But don't think that money is saved, that's gone. Like, I'm going to have to reuse that money for increase in food and beverage, or increase in rooms or meeting, whatever. So I definitely educate them on that. The thing with budget is I don't only give them one number. I give them a low number, a medium, and a high. So that the way they understand, there's fluctuations, there's flexibility. So at the lowest, if you want to accomplish these goals, we can do it for this much. Then medium tier is we can have this kind of stage elevated a little bit for a little bit more. And then if you really want to go all out and invest in a stage presence, or in like a really strong attendee experience and having activation stations and drive that top of the funnel, return on investment there, then here's a high budget for you. So that way they don't feel locked in. They feel that there's options. And when you give people choices, it flows so much more, and there's a lot more freedom in that. Yeah. So
absolutely. Yeah. So they're still in control of it. That's what they want. Makes sense. Well, another LinkedIn post you did was talking about must-haves for an AV RFP. So walk us through what some of those non-negotiables are and why they're so important.
Yeah, so AV is definitely one of those big bucket spend. I mean, it's even sometimes bigger than my own agency costs. It's bigger than, food oftentimes, because it's a stage presence. It's the very first thing that they see when they walk into the general session. And from my own lessons learned, there's a lot of back and forth when you're doing AV proposals. And different AV companies will have different ways of showing you their numbers. So you're going to have to take their proposal and do apples to apples comparison. And oftentimes they don't, categorize it the same way as another company does. So what I've learned is that, I don't just send out a generic email that says, hey, I'm doing a user conference. It's 200 people. I need it to be dual projection and a middle screen, and I need a stage. Like, I don't do that anymore. I create an entire presentation doc that has several slides, program overview slides on who the client is. And sometimes if it's NDA, I don't put the client's name. I just put like the gist of the event description. Then you have your location, the dates, agenda, and then any brand assets, because I already know by now that these AV companies going to want that up front.
Yeah.
So I anticipate that because I want to eliminate the back and forth. Like I don't have time to check that. So then I put in the venue specs of like venue capacity, because I know they're going to want that, ceiling height, venue contact information. And then I give them the agenda by day, right? This is how many breakouts we're going to have. This is how many expo booth we're going to need, and monitors and sound systems for evening reception. So I list it all out. And, lighting, for an example, up lighting, stage lighting, environment lighting. And then I also put like recording requirements or sizzle reel requirements, as well as live stream, camera crews. All of that is definitely, must have. And you can check out my LinkedIn post if you want to like have a detailed list. But the reason why I send an entire deck is because they can digest what it is that I'm really looking for.
Yeah, we'll make them work for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all the proposals that come in would look the same because I gave them a format and template of how I want the information, so that I don't even have to do the work of doing apples to apples, because I've already given them that template to fill in the information.
So we have a lot of AV production companies that subscribe to our podcast. So what are some things they can do to stand out, right? You give them the requirements. They all come back and should, so you can compare apples to apples. But what are some tips you can give them? What are you looking for them to stand out?
Yeah, great question. I mean, for us, yes, budget matters, numbers matters, but what we really are also looking for is a strategic creative partner to give us ideas. So I'm going to tell you my budget is $250 or $300. I don't want to tell you what stage. I don't only want to tell you what stage I'm looking for. I want you to tell me what I can afford with those numbers. Yeah. And then think beyond, think outside the box. Don't just, if I give you $200 to $350, don't give me just those options. Say, hey, if you want, here's some options under $250. Here's some options beyond $300 to give you an idea of what we could do for you.
There's that word options again.
The options, yes. And the strategic behind that is also really important, because we're looking for a strategic partner who can help us solve problems once we bring them on board. Because sometimes clients may want to add a session, and the session's complicated with a ton of like visual effects, and then you bring in like remote speakers. So there's going to be a lot of AV problems that pop up. And, we want the AV partners to help us solve those problems effectively and call problems out, right? Don't just wait for me to come to you with my problems. Join me in my meetings and say, hey, I was listening and I overheard this, and I think, we're going to have, we might run into these issues, and let's collaborate and let's kind of preemptively talk about it, and then we be prepared. Though I think that would be something that would help the AV company stand out.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback for all of you out there that are part of an AV production company. There you go. Stand out, provide options, be collaborative. Heard that as well. Well, those are all great tips. As we were prepping for this episode, we asked you, what is your biggest frustration in the industry? And you brought up tech overload. So talk to us about what that means to you. What does tech overload mean to you? And what do we do about it?
Yeah, so in a recent study from Visible, you can look it up. It's called The State of B2B Conferences, What's Changed, What Didn't Change. So the one thing that did change lately is that event planners are incorporating event tech into their programs a lot. It used to be for budgeting that you have your venue, your AV, and your food and beverage, and your rooms as your big bucket spend, right? But nowadays, they're spending a lot on event tech, like mobile app, which is $10,000. And then if you want to add networking app, that's another $10,000. And if you want to add gamification, that's another $5,000. If you want to add live streaming and a virtual component for hybrid aspect, that's another $20,000. So there's now a need for event tech being a priority, right? So one of the things that frustrating for a lot of our clients is there's a lot they don't have the budget for that, and so they have to ask for it. They have to make a case with their executives to do so. And so what we do is we help them define what that ROI is, if they were to adopt that event tech. So we list out all the benefits of the attendee journey and the experience and how it could really improve networking and really customer retention. And so, yeah, I think the frustration is getting executives to approve more money for the event tech. I really, I hope that event planners can have more courage to ask for that money. And number two is the learning curve. With event tech, there's so many out there, right? And it takes time to source. There's 800 out there. How do you get from 800 to one, especially if you have so many needs? So one of the things that we, talk about is that you have to really identify what your functionality requirements are based on your goals. And then from there, do demos. But demos is also frustrating. I love demos, says nobody. Nobody says that. It takes time to sit on demos and,
Yes.
Look through these tech. And a lot of people, there's a learning curve with that. So the tips that we give is when you do a demo, think of it as a chef, a personal chef who comes to your house and is cooking for you. You obviously want to identify the meals that you want to eat, and so that the chef can go shopping and get the proper ingredients, right? That's like that with a demo. So you want to tell your tech vendor, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for reporting. I'm looking for, evaluation of where people are coming from, what the ticket revenues are. I'm looking for expo and booth management, speaker management. When I show up for the 30-minute to an hour demo, I want you to show me what that looks like. So that way, the person, the chef, can really cook something up that will really speak to your need.
And that chef really appreciates you coming to the table, understanding what you're looking for and why you're looking for it, right? It's same with, when you sit down with a client, you're like, well, tell me what you're trying to accomplish. Well, I'm not really sure yet. I haven't really thought about that, right? It puts you at a disadvantage. And so it makes that experience so much better. Before you invest the time and the money and doing all the things, begin with the end in mind, right? What is it I want to get out of this? That way you can communicate it, right, to the agency, to that chef, to the demo person, whatever it might be, right? I think that's such an important step. So many people, it's fire then aim versus aim then fire. And it just lends itself to so much of the chaos and stress, not the peace you talked about in the beginning. So having a methodology and a framework around that is so, so important. You can spend a lot of time with the wrong company and you don't realize it till you get to the end and you're like, oh my God, they don't even have the most basic thing that I've known all along.
Exactly. And then all that time is lost. So now lessons learned. Now we do it completely different. We start with goals, then we identify our functionality requirements, then we identify the costs, and we do the demos. So yeah, I hope that those tips can help the listeners reduce the time that they spend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to wrap up, we always like to ask our guests one question at the end, and that is, what do you hope for our industry?
Oh, man. Oh, so exciting, because AI has really revolutionized what we do in the events industry. I think the most in any other industry, because it's making our lives so much easier. When I started Shiloh 10 years ago, the event tech that were out there was Cvent and eTouches. But even then it wasn't robust. It was the functionalities. It didn't really help me in my job. There's still a lot of manual work that I had to do, even up to recently, right? But with AI now, it's cut my time in by 30%, because now so here's some example. If I were to create a program, I get writer's block because I have to come up with a theme. I have to come up with the messaging and content writing and all that stuff. You get writer's block, right? You're like, oh my God. And then you go on a walk, you come back and you're still stuck. But with AI, it gives you that initial push to get all those ideas out, and you read and you're like, oh, that's actually really good. Let me build on that. So, it's all in the prompt as well, learning how to create prompts that would really yield the accurate result that you want from that AI tool. And there's more tools out there than just Chat GPT. So what I really hope for our industry is that the planners would learn to adopt that more, because AI is not going to replace us. It's only going to make our lives better. You know what I mean? And so, and then also, if you are going to adopt it, my hope is that people don't fully rely on it and just copy and paste, because there's still some human element that is missing in those words that are being generated. So you still have to read it. You still have to put your voice to it to make sure that it resonates with your audience and your program. And then lastly, regarding to AI, this is going to be super cool once it's built on more. Okay, so it's basically data analysis. It used to be, or still is, post-event or even during the planning, you analyze a bunch of attendees' data, right? Like where they're coming from, what their profiles are, what how much they pay, your revenue, week over week compared to last year. If you're trending upward and if you're trending downward, what do you need to do? With ChatGPT, there's this functionality called Code Generator. It's a plugin. You have to upgrade and pay for it, but it's very cheap, $20 a month. I upload the Excel sheet and I write a prompt that says, analyze this set of data and give me the following results. Give me the percentage of where the people are coming from per country, how much they paid for revenue per ticket, where am I trending according to last year? And like within minutes, like seconds, it tells me right away, like, oh shit, I need to bump up my promotion because I'm behind.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm really good. And I used to do that manually. And it took like an hour to 2 hours to pull the data, line it all up, do a graph chart, and put it in a presentation. It's like, oh my God, I'm already rolling my eyes. But now
They want your piece, right?
Yeah, within minutes, it's like, oh my, that's great. So I don't have to do the manual work of crunching the numbers. I just take the numbers and put a story behind it. Whereas before it's both, right? So I think the AI part is what I'm really hopeful for our industry.
Yeah. It's been really fun to kind of watch all the use cases just this year even, right? And the rapid speed in which it's evolving, it's changing, literally daily, hourly. And so it'll be really interesting to see how our industry, how quickly those that adopt versus those that are slow, right? Whether it's tech, whether it's the use of AI, and those that are on the cutting edge, we call them pioneers here at Lasso. Those are the ones who are going to win, right? Because they're going to get there faster, better, easier, all those sorts of things, all while maintaining their peace without it being so crazy. So I think that's, I think we all hope that for the industry for sure. And we should start adopting that more. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, I have a couple takeaways from our time together. First of all, thank you so much, Huong, for joining and sharing your expertise and your story of how you started Shiloh 10 years ago. I think that's fantastic. I think you serve such a great voice in that our industry does need to understand, how do you sell ROI? And you've said it several times throughout the podcast, which is start with the goals. If your customer doesn't know the goal, it's a moving target, right? Like get them to articulate what do they want to get out of it and why, right? Sometimes they don't know why they want to get something out of it. And so get to the why of what that is. So I think that's a really important part, is starting with the goals in mind. And then the importance of ROI, both qualitative and quantitative, and being able to serve that up in the right way that is digestible for them. And that kind of ties back to the money they're spending. So again, everyone knows exactly why they're doing this, what they hope to get out of it, measuring it, and then certainly providing the options as well along the way. People like to buy with options. They don't want to know there's just one way to skin the cat. And that's so important. Not only options, but, we're the experts. Make the recommend. These are 3 options. Here's what I'd recommend, and here's why I would recommend it. So I think those are all just great reminders and great lessons. So I'm really grateful for you spending some time with us today, sharing your knowledge. Where can our listeners find you?
Oh, I'm really active on LinkedIn. So it's very easy. It's MISS, so Miss, my first name and my last name. So Miss Huong Nguyen is my handle on LinkedIn. I'm actively posting on there, responding to comments. So feel free to connect with me. If you have any questions about today's podcast, definitely, it's free game. I'm here to share as much information as possible for free. Nothing, no strings attached. I'm just here to elevate event planners in the industry.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening in today. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, reach out to us at podcast@lasso.io. Thanks everybody.